in one of my favorite books by Bill Beswick. It's called Changing Your Story, 20 Life Lessons Drawn from Elite Sport. Chapter 11, the name of the chapter is called Focus on the Process. Let the winds come to you. Bill Beswick tells about a time he was sitting at home watching television and he saw an Olympian on television who had just won 2 gold medals. And the person interviewing them, the reporter interviewing this Olympian, mentioned something to the effect of they had been rewarded for chasing those medals. And the Olympian quickly corrected them and said, I didn't chase these medals. I trained for 6 hours a day for years, and the medals came to me. I chose to train. I chose to put in the time to improve myself, to attain these things that I want, to make myself better. What are you choosing? What are we as leaders choosing for ourselves every day that is making us a better leader? Are these things that we choose a part of a process of excellence? If not, then we may be chasing other people, their accolades, success, and if you're not careful, your own tail. In today's episode, Captain Alan Thompson and I are going to discuss things you can do immediately to begin to improve yourself as a leader, as a person, and how to develop those things progressively so that you can develop your leadership day by day, as well as the decisions you make about leadership on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, and so on, for the betterment not just of yourself, but of the people you lead. Welcome back to the Tribe Has Spoken. Tribe Has Spoken podcast, as always, Captain Alan Thompson and Coach Gary Castillo. And today we are going to discuss what are you doing as a leader to develop yourself?
Yeah, up until now, we've discussed developing others.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's pretty important to develop yourself as well. You can't let yourself fall behind. And so we've got several key points today to go over. You want to take it first?
Absolutely. So the first, we're going to scratch the surface at first and give you some ground level things that you can be doing that will be immediately impactful, but also things you can immediately get into. So like, for example, continuing education, podcasts, reading leadership books. And I would even, a caveat to reading books would be, what are your weaknesses? Where are your gaps that you need to fill in? And go find those podcasts and those books and those resources, etc.
Yeah, as far as the self-study type deal, I mean, obviously, if you're watching the show now, if you're listening to our podcast, you're interested in improving yourself. And it's not to say that you're not a good leader, but there's always room for improvement. And so we're glad that you're joining us in the podcast portion of the self-study, whether it's YouTube or on the podcast. There's conferences that are out there as well to look forward to. If you can make it to one of the TEDx Talks ones, it's be a fantastic one to jump into. And then, I mean, we had a leadership newsletter. I'll go ahead and pitch that. So if you guys are interested in that, go ahead and check that out. We'll provide a link down below if you want to jump in and check that out. Pretty quick little read, something to be done, whether it's daily or weekly, but carving out that time and kind of devoting a little bit of time daily or weekly to a self-study program will also help you develop yourself.
I love the term you use there, self-study. There's a whole lot that could be read into that.
Mm-hmm.
And are you studying yourself? And do you have, not just are you studying, but are you studying yourself? Do you have somebody to help you do that? So another point there we could make is, do you have a mentor? or somebody that you directly communicate with, that you can present to them the decisions that you make on a daily basis. And we're going to talk about that a whole lot deeper in a second, but someone that you can go to that might have more experience than you, that you can see their vantage point.
Yeah, gaining that perspective from somebody else that you trust is very important. And back to that mentor. We've all had really good mentors, and we've all had poor mentors, I guess, as well. From the military side of things, ones that helped develop me as a military officer, and then also from a strength conditioning standpoint, those guys that helped teach me about planning out not just the science behind it, but the logistics of getting individuals through a program and that type thing. They've been through enough that they can help give you some pretty good guidance. And I'm sure you as a coach have had great coaches like Kurt Huckabee that we know and love very well, that helped us develop as well.
And currently I am in a mentor-like program so that I can learn from this person he's not a coach. Well, he's a coach of people, but he is not a sport coach. But the leadership lessons are applicable all the same. So much takeaway that I've already applied. I mean, straight away, and not just to steps that I take and decisions I make, but to the way I see things. Boy, it's been so advantageous. I can't even begin to tell you the brevity of the impact that's had. So self-study, love that you brought that up, or love the way you say that term, self-study, and then having a mentor. Now let's dig a little bit deeper into some of the ways.
My next one lines up with the mentor, but it doesn't have to stop there. So my next one is accepting feedback. It's great if you've got somebody to tell you that, yeah, you messed up, or you're not going the best direction, or that decision wasn't the best decision. But you have to be able to accept that feedback from others. And that is extremely important. And to do that, you need to realize that there are multiple points of views. You said vantage points, but if you realize that other people have a different perspective, it's really hard when you're getting critical feedback to accept that. It doesn't necessarily have to be right, and you still don't have to agree with it. Agreeing with it and accepting it are two different things. Accept that their point of view has validity, and it will help you with that person as well, as far as gaining trust, creating that safe area. Again, these times could be hostile a little bit. Somebody's telling you that you've made poor decisions, but realizing that at the end of the day, they're seeing it from a different perspective, and there's some validity there.
Absolutely. What came to mind while you were saying that is, when you're getting this feedback from someone, if you want to know more about that person and the way they think, ask why. Okay, I hear you. Why do you see things this way? What's causing you to see things this way? You never know what might be revealed to you about. It could be something that they want to share. If they have a moment of trust and vulnerability, they want to share something that happened to them or a different experience, causing them to see things from the perspective that they're taking, or maybe it's something that they're currently going through. And that's a perfect opportunity for you as a leader to support them in that and walk with them in that while you're also listening to them. So yeah, love that. And it's a great transition there to self-reflection, taking people's feedback in. Is this perspective the one that I need to adopt, or what can I change about my perspective? And reflecting on yourself in the way you make decisions. What can you add to that, Captain?
Well, with that, carving out a little bit of time for you to look at the opportunities that you've had in that day. And so when you're getting feedback from, it could be one of your athletes, one of your assistant coaches, um, one of your platoon leaders, or one of your underlings in the corporate area there, looking back at those opportunities that you've had through the day, did you make the right decisions? Were your actions correct? Sometimes, when you're having opportunities throughout the day to lead, sometimes those could be heated. They could be, you know, surprising. You didn't expect that one moment for one of your athletes come to you and say, "Hey, coach, I got something for you real quick," and then hit you with something. You're like, "Oh man, I was over here trying to get this play run, or I'm trying to get the practice set up," and you're all of a sudden a athlete hits you with something that you weren't expecting, and you haven't had time to process it all. Did you make the right decision? And so later on, when you have time to process that and you're thinking through what you did that day, was the decision correct? Were your actions correct? And then that would also be a good time to brief it with maybe one of your assistant coaches, to sit down with them and say, "Hey, I went through this. This is what I was thinking. What do you think about this?" And then get some of that. And you talk about using it as a mentor, maybe running up the chain, but moving it down the chain as well is also a good teaching opportunity for them. And they may see it from a different perspective as well, just based on, where they've come through their coaching career. I think it's important that we take time to examine ourselves. Like I said earlier, we've talked about how up to this point, we talked about developing others. This is a good time to look back at your self-development and whether or not the things that you've done in that day were correct. And if they're not, that will lead you back into the self-study portion of it. Like, why did I make that decision? What about that wasn't correct? What was it about me that was the issue? You mentioned that on a podcast, on one of our earlier podcasts, of like conflicts, with a athlete that came to you regarding something that happened, and the athlete was, I don't remember exactly what the discussion was, but you said, the first thing that I do when an athlete brings something up that I've done is look at it from myself. Okay, what did I do with that? Did I do something that caused this? And I believe that you were referring that athlete to look at themselves first. Did you do something, that caused this? Maybe it was an issue with another athlete or something else that had happened on the field. And you ask them, did they look at themselves first? And I think that's important to, as far as the vulnerability, you talk about that all the time, and you got to open yourself up when you're looking deep. Better be ready and hold on.
Accountability is uncomfortable. I mean, just start there. Boy, it is uncomfortable. And what makes it more uncomfortable is when you have to do it yourself, when you have to hold yourself accountable, because it's easy for anyone, when someone is holding you accountable, for you to become defensive.
Oh yeah.
And you make up this narrative that they don't like you, or that they are against you in some form or fashion. But when you have to do it, well, you can't be against yourself, right? So it is an acceptance that I am doing something, I don't want to say wrong, but I am not looking at something with every perspective I look at it with.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings to the forefront our faults. And boy, that's what makes accountability so uncomfortable, because you don't want to admit that you have faults. Let's stay in this topic for just a second. Self-reflection. As always, we have some of our best conversation before I push record. And I think this is the portion, if anything, these other things that we've mentioned prior to self-reflection are things that anyone can do. Anybody can pick up a book. Anybody can turn on a podcast, right? But when it comes to the self-reflection part, again, when you bring in accountability, that's hard. And what we were talking about before is the actions of things of other leaders that we've seen, and how, like, what drove these people to make the decisions that they made in those instances, and how are they not seeing that those were, boy, they really went the wrong direction.
Mm.
And I think it's because of an absence of self-reflection, because surely if you attack a kid or a person or an employee personally, rather than in the role that they are in, and not attack, that's totally the wrong way to go with any kind of leadership conversation if you want them to grow. But if you could classify your interactions with them as attacking them personally, wow, how much fracture do you do to the relationship that you have with that person? Trust is lost, respect is lost. And we can go back to another podcast conversation we had about respect. If we don't have that, and so at the root of respect is you're going to question your integrity. Now you really got a problem.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and if that person doesn't feel valued, if the things that you've done have devalued them, it's easy to hurt somebody's feelings um, and devalue them in those small instances. But it's real hard to build them back up. You're wasting a lot of time and effort and resources because you didn't take the right approach. So doing these things that we're talking about as far as developing ourselves as leaders is going to build your program, because now you're not focusing on rebuilding back up to where you started. You're focused on pushing forward, and you're doing that by looking at yourself first.
I love that, looking at yourself first. What I wanted to mention while you were talking there is it all starts with the way you go about handling the people that you're leading. There's nothing to rebuild if you handle those situations in the correct manner. And it really helps you with your self-reflection as well, because if you're proactive in the way you go about situations with people, because people are going to make mistakes. We work with human beings, and we are one. So it's something we have to all accept. There will be mistakes made, but the manner in which you go about that can aid you in your self-reflection later.
Well, I think one of the things here when we're looking at this, especially as we're talking about dealing with others, when you look back through the day and you realize that maybe you didn't handle something properly, and it's not just about, okay, well, I didn't do that right, I'll have to do it better next time. The scenarios that took place with that, how did that happen? And can you keep it from happening in the future? We talked about earlier, you may have had a lot of different things that were going on, and a player hits you up with something, or maybe a parent comes to you, man, y'all just lost a game, and the parent comes up to you and is like, hey, my kid's not getting enough playing time. And you're like, dude, we just lost. Like there's emotions and things that are going on there. And one of the things that when we've gone through parent meetings as well, from the parent standpoint, usually there's a sheet of paper, or the coach is talking about, hey, don't hit me up with playing time right after a game, schedule a time with it. That's exactly what those coaches are doing, is they're trying to keep from a heated moment, an emotional moment from happening, by not ever letting it get to the point where a discussion that is unrelated to the issue at hand be exploded for no reason. And I think that that's a really good example of, at some point, some coach was like, I don't need to have discussions with parents right after a game, because it always ends badly. And I think that that's just a good example of that. So if you look back through the day and you're having some issues at a particular time or a particular situation, it gives you the advantage of later on just taking some time and realizing that you're going to need to process something, and scheduling a time later on when it's expected. You've had time to already kind of think about, okay, they're going to bring an issue up regarding this. I need to be ready to accept that there's going to be something uncomfortable that's going to happen, and it's going to be in a safe space. You're not out there on the field. You don't have other players that are running around that they don't need to hear whatever's going on, or maybe it gives you time to bring in your assistant coach to have them available to also sit in, and so that later you're going to be able to get a perspective from somebody else that is in there. Maybe that would help both of you guys, maybe a moderator in a sense, or maybe you need to be a moderator between two different people so you can hear both sides of it. Understanding what it takes to get you in the right position at the right time and place can help you make better decisions in the future. Mm-hmm. I know that was a big giant rant too, by the way.
No, that was great. I love, and I have, and I know a lot of other coaches do have a 24-hour rule, but I think that's so applicable to other environments as well. If it was the corporate world, and hey, this team member, we're going to go to a sales pitch, and I'm their direct line up the chain, right? I'm their leader, I'm their boss, whatever, maybe I'm the manager, and they totally blow a sales pitch. Well, the time to talk about that is not right after that, and they get rejected, right? That's the first thing on their mind, and the emotion tied to that is going to be rejection. It's the same thing with playing time. If I don't play a kid, and them and their parents are feeling rejection and a loss of respect, and you don't want the emotion of that tied to the conversation that you want to use, because the objective of the conversation you want to have with them is to make them feel valued. It's going to be real hard to feel valued when you feel like you're being rejected. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you're going to want to bring up, like you said, you want to bring up, well, on Tuesday at 3:00 at practice, you did this and made me feel disrespected then too, or unvalued then too.
Yeah.
And last year in this game, you didn't play my kid in this situation, and they should have played right then. Those kinds of things are going to rear their head. In this episode, we discussed in the end the progressive step we got to, was proactive self-reflection. We mentioned some other initial action steps that, as I stated, scratch the surface: journaling, reading, listening to podcasts, things of that nature, where you're simply absorbing information that can help you decipher perspective. And those things are very important. But what we got to in the end of this episode was something that is very hard to achieve, and that's proactive self-reflection. The hardest part of that is the honesty that you have to have with yourself, because we want to look at the decisions that we make and be so self-assured in them. And that confidence is great as a leader, yes, but you also have to be a skeptic of yourself when it comes to your decisions and the process by which you weigh those decisions, so that you can take in more perspectives and weigh the outcome of the decision you're going to make. I love this quote by Epictetus: "Progress is not achieved by luck or accident, but by working on yourself daily." And that's what self-reflection is. That's what proactive self-reflection is. It's working on yourself daily. It's looking at your processes for improving yourself, for improving your culture, cultural action steps, also how you want to handle situations, the demeanor with which you walk into a meeting. That takes self-reflection. It takes emotional maturity that has to be reflected on prior to that moment. And then also what you absorb. What are you allowing in? Is that a process of excellence? Is progress going to be achieved through that step that you're taking and through the thing that you're absorbing? I shared a tool in our weekly newsletter, And I'll put that link in the show notes on YouTube and on Buzzsprout, as well as Google and Apple Podcasts. But the tool helps you refine and accurately decipher whether your actions meet and match your intent, and whether those things and those possible decisions are going to be ineffective or influential, but most importantly, impactful. And you want those to be in a positive, impactful manner. Join us again next week on the Tribe Has Spoken, and we'll dive further into this process of proactive self-reflection, as well as other things that you can do to improve yourself and your leadership skills. Thank you for joining us, and have a blessed week.